Hi, this is going to be a quick introduction to MCG. I think MCG is a tool that often is overlooked in Max. It's not perfect, but I still think it has its uses. So to open up MCG, go to scripting, new Max creation graph, and we get this window up. So here is the graph view itself. Here is a minimap. Now it's empty, so you don't see much. And here is the operator depot. Here is a list of every operator we have available. If we press one of them, you will get the description of this node here. And you will also see where it's used. So in all of these tools or compounds has been used. So if you wonder how to use it, you can open up one of these and check it out. Down here you will get a message log. If you successfully evaluates the graph, you get the message here. If there are some problems with the graph, you also get a message about it here when you evaluate it. So what kind of tool can we make with MCG? If we press X in the view here, you'll get the search bar up, and if you type output, so here you can see the different types of tool we can create. You can only have one output on the graph. So if I have output modifier, and if I have a valid input in this, like empty, modifier mesh. So this node is going to supply the mesh from the stack. So now this modifier will do nothing, but if I save this and evaluate it, you will get the new modifier in your modifier list. And also note, if you save a graph and evaluate it with a valid output, you can't change the output afterwards. In that case, you have to delete the tool file or create a new one. So that's for the outputs. Or they're basically two different types you often use. It's geometry related. Like this will create a new primitive, and you had modifier, and you have spline. So this will create geometry objects, and you also have controllers of various types, like position controller, rotation controller, transform controller, and so on. So if we have decided on an output, we of course also need some inputs into our graph. There are basically two types of inputs. The one is tool inputs, they're called. This is inputs that is going to be exposed in the interface. So this is parameters the user will be able to change. So let's press X, type tool input. So here is the different types of parameters the user can put in. So for example, an integer, you can set the parameter name, choose a minimum, maximum value, and the default value. And for tool, you can use the asterisk as a wildcard. So instead of typing tool input colon, you can type tool and float, for example. And here we have min, max, default, and also if this float value is going to be in system units. And you have another type of input, which is a constant. And this constant node will recognize what type of value it holds. So the default here is a string. If I put, let's just put a pass-through node here so you can see we get like here it says which type it is. If we type 1, it will be an integer. If we type 5, also an integer. 5.0, it will be a float. You can also just use dot to get a float. And if you use brackets, that will be a vector, curly brackets, that will be an array. So what is an array? That is just a container of many different values. So here we have this array holds all of these values 1, 2, 3, 4. And an array could be a container of any value, really. It can be an array of booleans, array of vertices, of faces, of matrices, and so on. And one of the key aspects of MCG is creating functions we can apply on these arrays. So how do we make a function? First, let's create an array using array of integers, and I use a constant here. So now you'll see this line is red. That is because this value here is a string, and this node expects an integer. So if I type 10 here, this will create an array of 10 incrementing numbers. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. As you see here in the description, returns an array of integers from 0 to n minus 1. So let's say we wanted to add 1 to each of these numbers. We could do that with a function. And to apply a function on this array, we use the for each. And we need an add operator and 1. And how this function works is that the item you want to use from this array, you have to leave a space open for that one. And you see here the fn, instead of you can do this, but you use this function like that. So now you get, now you see this line is red. That's because there could only be one open spot for this item in the array. So now each of these numbers in this array will be added by 10. But what if, for example, if you wanted to multiply it by itself, multiply, that doesn't work because we can only have one spot open. So in these cases we can use a pass through. Path through is useful for splitting up. So pass integer in this case. So now this function has only one input here, and we split it up to this. And I often use these pass-throughs to route the lines. So you can sometimes it's the delete button bugs out, so you have to like right click and there it works again. Hold shift and move to copy. If you hold control, you get this dotted dashed line, release, and you put it in. If you hold alt and move, you remove it from the line. So I collapse this and scale them down. Can be useful if you to keep it a bit more tidy. If I wanted to have some nodes in here and needed to go around with this parameter here, you can have as many as you want really. Yeah, you get the point. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a tool in MCG. What I'm going to make is a line. We want to have a spinner for the length and markings like this with a given spacing in between, and the width. This is going to be the length of these markings. So a kind of ruler. Let's go to scripting, new max creation graph. The output is going to be spline, and we're going to need some tool inputs that's going to be available to the user. These are going to be float, first length. I'm going to change the min and max to low and high as possible. The default is going to be 100 and it's going to be in system units. So we need the length, the width, the width is going to be default to, let's say, 5, and spacing default to 10. This is not going to be negative. So how do we create a spline? Well, we can use, for example, spline from points. This needs an array of vectors which is going to be the vertices of this spline. So for the spline we're going to make, we need 2 vertices for the line itself, one at 0, so 0 vector, and the second vertex is going to be along the axis and with the length. So we're going to use a vector from x. This is going to be 0 in the y and z axis and this value in the x axis. Then we need to put these vertices in an array. So we're going to use an array 2. Plug in the points. And we need to say if this spline is going to be closed or not. It's not going to be closed, it's a line, so it's open. So now we can save it and test it, but before we're going to go to edit graph properties and set a category. I'm going to choose tutorial. You can choose whatever you like. And the tool name, let's call it ruler tut. And let's save it. So here we see the message, save file. And if we go to build, evaluate, or press Ctrl plus E, we see here validation succeeded, successfully generated, and so on. Which means we now should have this spline available to us, ruler tut. Go to the modify panel, and we got this parameter available to change the length. If it's negative, it's just going to be the other way. Then we need the markings. So first we're going to make one of the markings. Then we're going to get the positions where we need to place these markings. So first, to get the line, you can just copy this here. We still need the 0, and instead of vector from x, we're going to use a vector from y, because it's going to be along this way. Just copy this here. Now I just plug this in instead of that one, just to see. Save, evaluate. So now we got the width here. And we can also join them together by attach splines. Save, evaluate. So now we got both the length and the width here for the marking. Then we're going to have to find out how many of the markings we need based on the spacing value. And that is going to be the length of the spline divided by this spacing. That is going to give us the count of markings. So divide length and we need to floor it. And we're going to create an array of integers. So this is going to be a multiplier of the spacing. So if we have the spacing at 10, this will create an array of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to as many as the markers we need. And we're going to multiply this by the spacing. So the first is going to be at 0, the next is going to be spacing times 1, next is going to be spacing times 2, spacing times 3, and so on. So we already have this here, spacing, multiply. And we need to convert these integers to floats, because you can't multiply a float by an integer, you have to convert it to a float. Integer as float. So now all of these numbers here, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, will be multiplied by the spacing. Let's collapse this so it looks a bit more tidy. Then we just use these float values as vector from x. Then we can say offset this spline by these vectors. So we will get this spline offset by 1 spacing, 2 spacing, 3 spacing, and so on. But now this is an array of splines, so we can use an attach all splines that will sort of merge them together to one spline and plug it in here. Let's save and evaluate. And you see we sort of miss one. That is because in MCG the arrays are 0 based. So when we create this array of integers, the first value is going to be 0, and if we need 10 markings, the last number is going to be 9. So for that we're just going to put a +1 in here. +1. Hold control. Plug in. So that looks better. So if we have 100, spacing is 10. So yeah, pretty simple tool, but who knows, maybe it could be useful for something. So I think this concludes this introduction to MCG. I hope you learned something from it. Thank you and goodbye.